Welcome into Triple Zeros. I'm your host, Josh Buchalter. Follow me on Twitter at JoshGBuck. Hit up the Facebook page, Clocker Sports, website, clockersports.com, and the email address, clockersports@gmail.com. Man, it's been so great having so much sports going on right now. I don't know what I'm going to do, how I'm going to handle it once the NBA is actually wrapped up with the finals coming up right around October, the end of October, I believe it was. But, as it were, we still have a lot going on right now. And this weekend, between the last time we spoke on Thursday night, Friday, depending on when you partook of the podcast, a lot has happened. And so let's get right into it, man. You had the Thursday night game. We talked about that, though. The Bengals fall to the Browns as Joe Burrow still looks for his first win. But that wasn't the highlight. That wasn't the highlight by any stretch of the NFL weekend. You had a lot going on. First and foremost, I want to give a shout out to my boy Cam. That's right, Killer Cam Newton. Now listen, they didn't get the win. The Patriots are 1-1 on the season. But if that's what you are solely judging your quarterback wins on, then I'm sure people are disappointed all the time. But Cam has looked really adept as a thrower, right? I don't want to say he's looked great, but I think he's thrown a lot better than anybody had anticipated, especially coming to this system with the Patriots. Now, I will say that they have used him as a runner a lot more than I think anybody would have expected. He's completing 71% of his passes this season, 552 yards, and a touchdown. But he's also run 26 times for 122 yards and 4 touchdowns that way. So Cam's going at it. I think we were all kind of skeptical to see what would happen if he was forced to become more of a passer than a runner. And against the Seahawks, the Panthers. Wow, the Patriots did lose that game 30-35. But Cam threw 44 times, and again, he looked really adept as a thrower. And I think that that's part of what people were doubting him for. And listen, I get it. You haven't seen him in a long time. It's been a while since he was at his MVP level. But I've always thought that the hate that he got was far more than what it should have been. Simply because of the fact that, I think they saw how he dressed. I know they saw how he dressed, and they saw him celebrating in the end zone and assumed that he's just a diva guy. But every teammate you've ever heard, aside from Kelvin Benjamin, who has eaten himself out of the league, has said that he's a team-first guy. He meant a lot to the community down there in Carolina. Every one of those touchdowns that he would score, he would give the ball to beaming, smiling is not even the word, beaming ear-to-ear child in the stands. We could talk about how he dresses, but I don't care. Of course, I'm biased. I told you. Cam and Russell Westbrook are my favorite two players, and both have had their issues with effectiveness over the past couple of seasons, so I'm not going to completely berate anybody for down them, but I just will say, seems like he's opening up some eyes. Of course, this is just early on in the season, and they've only played the Miami Dolphins and the Seattle Seahawks, so it's not like the Seahawks game, they did lose on a last play that was almost a reversal of fortunes. The Patriots had the ball down at the 1, and they handed it off to Cam. They had a quarterback run on a play that I believe the play before was the same kind of call and got stuffed. But if you remember a few years ago, the Super Bowl, and they talked about it all before the game and all throughout the game, the pass at the 1 that was intercepted by Malcolm Butler, blah, blah, blah. And, of course, you ended up having it in this way. A little bit of redemption. I always laugh when they say that because it's a regular season game. They talk about they can get a little payback for losing in the Super Bowl. Who the hell is getting payback for losing the Super Bowl in week 2? That's always been something that's kind of just thrown me. I'm like, wait, what? This is retribution? This? Might have to wait a little bit to get that, brother. But I digress. I'm bearing the lead here. The biggest story of the weekend was the injury apocalypse that beset the NFL as names were dropping left and right. And when I say names, that's not disrespecting anybody who was a lesser known player in the NFL. That's just to say that there were some very, very big hitters taken out, and no team probably felt it more than the San Francisco 49ers. They lost, they were already without tight end George Kittle with the knee sprain, but they lost their top 2 running backs in Raheem Mostert and Tevin Coleman to knee injuries. They lost Jimmy Garoppolo to an ankle injury, though his is supposed to be better. But that wasn't it. They didn't just lose offensive guys. Yeah, it got really ugly. They lost Nick Bosa, stud second-year defensive end, and Solomon Thomas, rotational player. He was the guy, famously, that was taken after Mitchell Trubisky that the Bears were afraid would be whatever. I digress. Both of them tore their ACLs as well, so it was bad for the 49ers. They are on life support. They're already without Deebo Samuel. They lost Richard Sherman. Like, dude, it is bad. Bad. So much so that they just signed Ziggy Ansah to a 1-year deal. They're flirting with signing him for a couple of times over the before the start of the season, and so now they have to do something because they're just losing guys left and right. And you just wonder how they're going to make it. But again, they weren't the only ones. The Vikings lost linebacker Anthony Barr. You saw Saquon Barkley get a blown ACL and tore partially his MCL as well, facing the Bears. That was about the second quarter, I believe it was, that he went down and kind of just grabbed at it right away. Christian McCaffrey got hurt, though he's expected to return. Rams rookie running back Cam Akers got hurt. You just had it was decimation. It was destruction, chaos everywhere, man. It was one of the gruesomest. And I'm pretty sure that's not the way you would probably phrase that, but that's what I'm doing now. Cortland Sutton of the Denver Broncos, it was just bad. And it's really bad because a lot of these guys are on my fantasy team. Now, I'm being completely facetious here. They are, but I'm not. That's literally the least of the worries. Hopefully these guys can all come back. But this is just proof positive. And it was like 20-something guys or something like that. It was bad, dude. Really bad. This is just proof positive, though, to all those guys and hopefully to those players as well. You probably need the preseason, right? Remember how I actually wrote about it for Last Word in Pro Football that I thought that fewer preseason games would be beneficial to the Chicago Bears and that they wouldn't be able to, have a lot of junk going on. They had to kind of condense, and I kind of feel like they're better when they're forced. So we'll talk about that concept later with this team because it kind of fits to them on a more local level as well. But you just don't know. Right, you just don't know how are these guys going to bounce back? How do you deal with all of these guys falling left and right? Now, if you would have told me that they would have went and had like I said, there's a lot of 4 to 6 weeks too, right? I named you the big names and the extended absence guys, but there are a lot of 4 to 6, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, day to day, week to week type injuries that would have been sorted out in the preseason. And I'll address this in a minute, but for my Bears, Robert Quinn was a guy who they paid top dollar for. He didn't do a lot in training camp, and then he missed the first week. Now, he rotated in week 2, and I'll talk about his impact there again later. But the fact of the matter is, with the preseason, I think they would have worked through that. And I know he was already hurt, but he got hurt in camp, right? It just wouldn't have seemed as bad. I just feel like that is, and I know I'm not saying this out without basis. This has been said before. The preseason is needed to get you acclimated to the grind, the physical nature of football, getting hitting someone, quick cuts, all those type of unnatural body motions that you're going to do throughout a season are for the preseason when you're not in there the entire game, where they ramp you up from one quarter to one half. Maybe you play a little bit into the second half depending on what kind of a roster you have. And then, week 4, you get that rest week. But again, injuries happen then too. It just seems like they have the time to heal because you're, playing other games instead. Now we're just seeing guys left and right get slammed. And it was just an ugly, ugly day for injuries across. This is league-wide. League-wide. And and this is in addition to all the players who had already opted out for COVID. And that's probably going to be a tally that I put up for Clocker Sports about just the people that were lost in 2020 in the NFL to whether it be COVID or the injury so early on. We're only 2 weeks in. And I'm telling you, they lost about 20 guys in one weekend. Horrible, horrible things to see. That's not what I would wish for any team. I know it ultimately it's the healthiest team at the end usually, but that's not something that you ever want to see. So I don't wish anybody to ever have to go through the rehab process and all those things, or any teams, because I know how crappy it is. I'm a guy who likes to see teams face each other at their top, at their peak performance, and when it's not that, then it's kind of like, I mean, you still enjoy it, but it's just not the same when everybody's missing. Like the Niners, man, it's not that division's. Speaking of that division, right? It's probably up for grabs now, and you got Seattle there, and I listen. I'll get to that in a second. Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals. Kyler Murray is your MVP, folks. Just get with it. Get used to it. Deal with it. Understand it. Embrace it. Don't fight it. Murray put on another dazzling show. Now, I get it. He faced the Washington Redskins, and people are going to want to, disparage the fact that Arizona ended up winning this game against a team that's really should be amongst the worst, but they've been a lot better than I think anybody wanted to admit. At least defensively, that defense is stout, and it should be because they've invested a lot of first-round picks in the defensive line. But it's still not a great team, so I understand people's hesitation to want to again to crown him so early. I wouldn't crown him so early if I wasn't convinced myself already, even before seeing a game played. You've seen the connection with him, he and Hopkins. You've seen him put up the gaudy numbers, but I think what you're seeing more of this year is him being a smarter player. And the moments, I talked about it last episode about how he broke off that big run. It wasn't necessarily the stats, it was more so the moment, the him overcoming the situation against San Fran to eke that victory out. And so when you see him go up against the Washington Redskins, right, and they get it's not the most competitive team. I don't want to, like, it was a 30-15 game. They were winning this handily. So I'm just trying to see how you had to watch him play. It's an awe-inspiring type of play, and I think the numbers are still there. He still had 223 yards. I'm sorry, that's Haskins. I am jumping the gun. He had 286 yards. That's why that didn't look right. 286 yards, a touchdown, and an interception for Kyler Murray. He also had 8 carries, 67 yards, and 2 more tugs on the ground. He was second leading rusher on the team with behind Kenyon Drake, who had 86 yards, but that's besides the point. Nuke Hopkins, 8 catches, 68 yards in a tug. Kyler's going to be your MVP. And you can disagree, but you can't change the facts. And yes, I'm calling it facts right now. I know it's way too early to say anything is solidified, but I'm really, really impressed with what I've seen so far from him, and I'm really looking forward to what not only he can do, but what the Cardinals are going to be able to do. Again, that division now could be wide open because you have the San Fran is just decimated with injuries, and their next couple of games are extremely winnable for the Cardinals. Detroit Lions, that's a home game. They go then on a 3-game road trip to the Panthers, the Jets, and then the Cowboys. Now listen, and before they end up coming back home to face the Seattle Seahawks and then take on their bye, listen, there is a really, really good chance that the Cardinals are 6-0 before they face the Seahawks. Like, there's a legit Detroit. That doesn't work. That shouldn't worry them. Carolina, that shouldn't worry them. They just lost Christian McCaffrey. Detroit has still been without Kenny Golladay, and they can't stop me. Now you have seen their secondary play a little bit better, but they got blown out pretty badly too against the Packers this weekend. You got New York, and that's just a dumpster fire. I don't care what you say. And now Dallas. Dallas is the one that's interesting. That one, though, I think is going to end up being a shootout, and that's why it's interesting. It's not because Dallas can stop them. I don't think they can stop them at all, but they can definitely put some points up to hang with them, and that's where they should be worried. But that's their first threat of a game before they face the Seahawks. So they could, let's say they'll go 5-0 because they could beat the next 3 teams, I think, with one hand behind their back: Lions, Panthers, and Jets. Cowboys, it gets a little tricky because especially on the road, and then you come back to face the Seahawks. They could literally go into their bye week 6-1, 5-2. Ew. Now, granted, that 2 might be a 2-game losing streak, and that's never what you want. But they come out facing the Dolphins, so like you can get a get-right game after that. Gets a little tougher second half of the season, but dude, there's a really good shot that he and the Cardinals go 6-1 and 5 or 5-2. And if that's the case, and he's putting up these kind of stats, good luck catching them for MVP. Now, I say that, and of course, I'm already biased because Kyler is my pick for MVP. I say that knowing full well that one Russell Carrington Wilson, just learned that that's his middle name, is also doing his damn thing right now, and I can't even be mad at it. The man right now is 82% of his passes through 2 games, mind you. 82% of his passes. He's thrown 63 passes, by the way, in 2 games. Now, remember, I just told you Joe Burrow last Thursday threw 60 passes. So Russ is being efficient. He's being extremely accurate. He's got 9 touchdowns and 1 pick. He's only been sacked 5 times. Remember, this is a guy whose offensive line is trash or has been trash in years past. So to see him still doing it this way, that's great. He's only run 8 times, but he's got 68 yards. I think that's a good improvement for him. He's averaging a hell of a clip. Listen, this was something that I talked about last year with Lamar on that push. Russ was breathing down Lamar's neck. I think he, hurts a lot by playing in Seattle, but I can't really use that argument this year because I think Kyler wins it, and he's in Arizona. They're not, I think they're the same time zone unless Arizona's in the mountain, and then they get the 1-hour difference. Either way, they're both Western teams, and you're not getting as many eyes as you would on an East Coast guy. But this is going to be a tight race, especially if Russ is putting up numbers like that. Damn, 9 tugs and 1 pick. Okay, well then, sir, have yourself a little bit of a season. He hasn't put it in on the ground yet, but he has fumbled it. Listen, 2 turnovers total on the season. It's going to be tough. Now, what I will say about the Seahawks is that they are a better team, and that defense will make more plays, I think, long run than the Cardinals one will. So you might not see Russ, and they have a much better running game. And so you might not see Russ put up those kind of gaudy stats, but the hashtag let Russ cook has turned into something meaningful. And their next few games, they got 3 before they go on the bye. Dallas, Miami, and Minnesota. They can win all 3 of those games. Hit the bye, come out of their bye, and that's when they face Arizona. And then they face that decimated Niners team. So looking at Seattle, there's a good chance they're 5-0 heading to the bye week. Come out of that 6-0. Maybe, and then who knows what's going on with San Fran by then, but they won't have Bosa or Solomon Thomas, so it won't be the San Francisco 49ers they're used to. They'll probably have Garoppolo and Kittle back, though, so that'll be a big boost to them. So it's going to be a tight one. This is going to be a tight one. I'm still pushing for Kyler. I still think that he will have to carry that team more than Russ will, even though Russ does everything. That's kind of a misnomer because it's not really what's happening, but I definitely think that that's what the perception will be because of how strong that Seattle run game is and how many more plays I think their defense ends up making. So I'm going to push it. Kyler Murray for MVP. That's the story. I'm sticking to it. However, but I will say that Russ is probably leading in some people's minds, or maybe even a lot of people's minds, and it's going to be a tight race all year. And other teams, Minnesota Vikings and Philadelphia Eagles are both in trouble, and I'm not even going to spend a lot of time on these trash heaps right now. Minnesota traded Stephon Diggs, and it shows. They had a mass exodus in their secondary, and it shows. They have, like I just told you, lost Anthony Barr for the season. Danielle Hunter, I think he's still out as well. After they just got Yannick Ngakoue, it just has to be good. Kirk Cousins was booty cheeks last game. My man had like a 7.4 quarterback rating. Come on, fam. That's trash juice. And not just because you hurt my fantasy team without getting big points. Adam Thielen, 3 catches for 30-some-odd yards. Come on, man. Need y'all to be better than that. The Eagles have been thrashed by injuries. They lost both starting guards. They lost the starting tackle. They've lost running back, or they lost like all their wide receivers. It's just been bad. It's just been bad. And even as they're getting guys back, Carson Wentz has looked shaky at best. And so you just got to look. They're both 0-2 right now. They're both 0-2 right now. Vikings lost me money too, by the way. I bet on them to beat Indianapolis. I just didn't think that the Colts could do it, but they did. I thought Minnesota would have the cohesion part of it down to take over that game. They didn't. But these guys at 0-2, man, in a season that I think a lot of teams are going to be fighting through mistakes, misfires, and just general choppiness before about mid-season, you can't afford to lose this kind of ground because by the time you get it together, all those other teams have probably already got it together and they're 2, 3, 4 games ahead of you in the standings, and now you're cooked. Now, there are extra playoff spots available this year, but, Minnesota's probably not going to get it. They look like they're going to be 3rd in the division. If it wasn't for Detroit, and you know what? They might not be better than Detroit. Shh. Just saying. But Philly, for all of their strife and stuff, you know that they are a team that can just battle back and not necessarily be without it. They did activate Jalen Hurts this past week, so maybe they're starting to get him more involved, and who knows? I don't think we end up seeing a quarterback switch because Carson Wentz hasn't played horrible, but it hasn't looked great, and you never know. He didn't win the Super Bowl, so, you never know. They did pay him, though, so I don't see them moving on. I'm just saying. It is interesting that they drafted a quarterback, and now they have him there. Again, with Wentz's injury history, though, it's understandable why they would do that anyway. Just notable that he was up this weekend. Going back to the West Coast, for the Los Angeles Chargers, Justin Herbert took over for starter Tyrod Taylor. Taylor, before the game, was experiencing chest pains. Ended up actually having to go to the hospital, and it was said that it was in response to a injection that he got for a chest injury that he had that obviously he didn't react well to, so he ended up going to the doctor. What happened was Justin Herbert came in and threw for 311 yards and a touchdown, but he did throw a back-breaking pick. So I'll say this: 66% of his passes. The kid looked fluid. He looked like a natural, and I think that's what led to his interception because he was dealing. He was precise. He was getting Keenan Allen involved. The Chargers' run game has looked really solid this year, especially considering the fact that they don't have that premier passer in the center to threaten the defense like you would think that they would need to open up that box. They still got a lot of space to run and gotten two guys to look extremely effective toting the rock. But I think the wheeling and dealing is what led to Herbert throwing across his body off his back foot in desperation and getting picked off to seal the deal. Here's the thing. Head coach Anthony Lynn came out and said that once Tyrod Taylor is healthy, he will be the starter. That's the dumbest thing in the world. Now, I will give him this credit. He said if he's 100% healthy, do you know how long this man would be 99.9% healthy if I was the head coach? You got to figure out, listen, it's not Tyrod Taylor. He's not the future. It's Herbert, and the kid showed you, I think the kid showed that he's ready to play or he can play in this league. Granted, that was against a team who did not game plan for him without any NFL film on him from preseason to go off of. So take that with a grain of salt, but it will be interesting to see if Tyrod ends up getting Wally pipped by the rookie. Charges against New England Patriots owner Robert Kraft were dropped after the court rules that the cameras violated the patrons' rights to privacy. Now, the cameras were initially installed to basically spy on the proprietors of the business, not necessarily the patrons. So that's the technicality that his high-priced team of lawyers got favorably ruled, or got ruled in favor of, however you want to word that, by the circuit court. And now they're trying to get those tapes destroyed so that there's no leakage further and further damage is done. If you recall, he denied all charges unequivocally, but also released an apology. So take that what you will. Listen, old dudes getting tugged on, whatever, dude. Do what you got to do, fam. It's weird. It's definitely a weird one. They did say that he could still face possible retribution, possible penalization from the NFL for his transgressions. Now, I have unnamed sources who are pretty tapped into the Robert Kraft circle, and the belief, at least from his side when this began, was that this was something done via Roger Goodell. And there were political motivations behind it, and whatever the case may be, it is what it is now, and those charges have been dropped. But just keep that under your hat and keep an eye on the interactions between Goodell and Kraft going forward. We know that the whole Spygate and all that stuff happened, Deflategate. So there's no love lost, but just keep an eye on their relations and how that tends to work out going forward. Coaches, organizations were all getting hit with mask fines this weekend, and they are not, and I mean not cheap. For coaches, it's $100,000 per coach. For the organizations, $250,000. $350,000 for not wearing your mask properly, and there were a lot of notable coaches too. I guess they're all notable. It's only 32 of them, and you know who they are. Pete Carroll, Kyle Shanahan, Vic Fangio. Tonight on Monday Night Football, John Gruden was walking around. Bill Belichick was walking around looking like the plague doctor. It's not a good look. And I mean, you got guys pulling the mask down and talking, and you know, I'm not sure why they don't all just go the Andy Reid route and get that face shield. After he had that initial night of the fog, it's been pretty crystal clear. I don't know what they sprayed on it to keep it from mist or from clouding on him, but kudos to the Chiefs equipment staff there for making sure that old Red could see throughout the entire game and not just be coaching through the fog. The Atlanta Falcons became the first team since 1933 to lose a game to lose a game after scoring 39 plus points and having 0 turnovers. Teams in that situation were previously 440-0. That per Elias Sports Bureau. Ew. That's not something anybody should ever want to be associated with, man. That is just bad. Ew, dude. Come on now. I got to be more careful. My beloved Chicago Bears got a victory against the New York Giants, a beat-up New York Giants team that really just got beat up during this game because they came in with all 5 of their offensive weapons intact and left with 3. Because you lost Saquon Barkley, as I mentioned earlier, with that torn ACL, partially torn MCL. Speedy recovery to him. Hopefully they upgrade that offensive line so he can actually run the ball. They also lost Sterling Shepard, and they'll see how he can bounce back. It was to a turf toe. And it looked, you could see it when it happened. His foot got extended a little bit extra. The big takeaway for me in this, and I'm done talking about the Giants, but let's go back to the Bears. this was a game that showed some progress. I'm not going to act like I'm impressed because this is not a good team that they beat, but they did win. And what we did see from them was for a half, they looked like a dominant football team over the lesser opponent. Why is that significant if it's a bad opponent? Because against another bad opponent in week one that they've historically done well against, the Detroit Lions, they could only muster one quarter, and it was the fourth quarter, and it was desperation time. So in this game, they're up to a half. If we're working without a preseason, again, I told you, I thought that fewer preseason games could help. I thought no was a bit much, obviously, for everybody. But since it's everyone affected by it, it seems like it's leveled the playing field, and the Bears might be ahead of the curve in that they haven't really changed much about their team this offseason, offensively at least. So now the offense can kind of come in humming a little bit, and we've seen that. What we saw, especially from Mitchell Trubisky, was encouraging. He was the highest graded offensive player in week 2 in the Bears. Sorry, let's try that again. Mitchell Trubisky was the Bears' highest graded offensive player in week 2 with an 80.2 grade per PFF, Pro Football Focus. Now, I'll say this. He was dealing for a good half of that game. Second half came around, and he tried to get Allen Robinson more involved and forced a couple of passes he shouldn't have that got picked off. One was deflected and high, and Robinson couldn't bring it. He got his hands up. It was too much. And ended up getting picked off. The second one was one that was on the sideline and thrown, and the defender, James Bradbury, ripped the ball out of Robinson's hands. Now, in the moment, I was critical of Robinson, and I still hold this belief somewhat that I would like to see him rip that ball away, but I must concede he makes that play 8, 9 times out of 10, so I can't really be mad. And, of course, Bradbury's underrated, I think, as a corner in this league, especially at $14 million. He's a solid guy. He's not gonna. It's not a world beater, but he's a strong physical corner, and you saw that on that play. It was notable that Robinson had the off game because of his contract discussions, but I think that's okay because of the fact that you're not gonna kill it every week. And it allowed other guys to step up, namely Darnell Mooney in the receiving corps. The young man caught his first touchdown and looked spry and looked like a weapon. He looked like the weapon we thought Anthony Miller would be. A guy who's been a part-time player who seems to be locked into their slot role, who might have even been passed up by Mooney at this point in terms of playing on the outside. That's kind of sad because Miller is a guy who profiles as maybe the most talented guy coming into the year, most talented guy in the group, but he seems to have been passed up, and you see why. There's a lot of route running errors. Mitch laid out a nice pass for him into the end zone that would have salted the game away, put it out of reach for him, and he just couldn't bring it in. Now, granted, he had to die for it, but it was. I mean, this is in the hands, and this is not his first time doing this year. So there's a problem there. Concentration. That's a concentration issue. That's not a talent issue. That's not a connection issue. That's concentration. That's thinking about something before you finish this current task. That's a turn and a run before you can secure the ball type of deal. And so I think he'll get it, but you can only say that for so long. And so my big takeaway from this game was they played well. They've upped their performance to a full half of good football. I wrote that for Last Word on Pro Football. Be sure to check that one out. But it's not enough, and with this gauntlet, they got Atlanta this week, and it gets rough. It gets really rough. They got 5 playoff teams, I think, from 2019 on the schedule coming up. There's no time for one quarter, one half. You need at least 3 and probably 4 full quarters. I'm just spitballing here. You're probably gonna need the full 60 minutes to pull out a lot of these victories on the upcoming slate here. So some of the encouraging things though were the early play by the defense. They were very active, very feisty. You saw Robert Quinn come in and get a strip sack right away. That, if he's healthy, all the trash that was talked about him for missing and being, overpaid and all, wayside, just gone. Because all anybody wants is to see Mac have a competent complement and maybe a guy who can put up the numbers if they're still going to dedicate all their focus to Khalil Mack, who, by the way, also had a sack along with Barkevious Mingo and Akeem Hicks. But again, the star of the show, to me, aside from Trubisky's early decision-making after Nagy got... See, that's another thing. Before I talk about my big star, Nagy can't keep pulling the ball out of Trubisky's hand when he makes a mistake. That's why he is the way he is now. I really am starting to believe that the time under John Fox and the telling the kid to keep it so tight, and even his first season with Nagy, where they tried to play it so close to the vest, might have damaged some of the psyche. You need your quarterback to be confident, if not cocky, and you don't see a lot of that swagger with Mitch, but when he's dealing, he's dealing. And so I feel like when they first took the ball out of his hands, it threw the doubt in there. Then he did it again. But again, the first pick was bad. You got to get that ball down, and you don't like to see that pass forced across the middle where there's multiple hands going to be flying across. But that one on the sideline, that's a 50-50 ball, man. You got to live with that. So I get why you want to take the ball out of his hands when you see him start getting shaky, but I also think that would have been a great time to call up a strike for him to get himself back in the groove, because we see when he's not thinking about it, when he's not in his own head, he can actually play. But we don't see that far enough. We don't see that often enough, and that's why you see so many people who are out on him already, despite it only being his 4th year. So we'll see what ends up happening for him. But it's a good start for Trubisky. The Bears are 2-0, first time since 2013, I believe it was. So they, long time coming. But it's got so much tougher on the way. They have to do better, and that's all. That's all it really is. It's not that they can't celebrate this win. They should. You got to celebrate every win. But as this going is about to get tougher, I'd be interested to see how well they are able to maintain whatever it is that they're trying to build. If they're going to keep running, David Montgomery has been committed to. He avoided 2 serious injuries in back-to-back weeks, a groin injury, and then he fell on his head against the Giants. Like, they said it was neck, but that was a compact. Like, it hurt me. I needed a Tylenol. He fell dead on his head and his neck. Went to the locker room, but ended up coming back out and even had a drive where they ran, I think, 7 of 12 plays. So kudos to him. Kudos to Matt Nagy for figuring out the balance. Their Bears are the run-heaviest team in neutral game situations. That's great. That's great. Keep it up. Commit to that running game. Limit the exposure to your quarterback who's still seeming to fill his way out. But have some more faith in him when you see that he's out there getting a groove. If he loses it a little bit, give him another shot. If he F's that one up, then you can take the ball away. But don't cut him off at the knees, because I think that he was building something there. It didn't seem beneficial to take him down the way that it was. So let's switch gears over to the NBA and talk about it, man. Some things I have to go over. First and foremost, let's talk about what happened in China. Ty Lawson, former point guard, Denver Nuggets, I forget where else, but I know he was with the Nuggets. Ty Lawson, banned from the Chinese Basketball Association, the CBA, for posting pictures saying that the women over there had the cakes and that he might have to switch it up. And he posted a picture of himself in the strip club getting juked on. Some people will call this an overreaction by the Chinese government, but if you know anything about the Chinese government, you know this is probably an underreaction. This is more than likely his warning shot, and I hope Mr. Lawson is on his way back already, if not already on American soil, because it doesn't usually end well for people who openly criticize or speak out. Now, this was a criticism, which is probably why he got the warning, but to be banned for saying they got the cakes, that's a compliment. I don't know if they know that. Maybe they don't know. Maybe he should have had somebody translate it, because they need to know. Jimmy Butler, we've been talking about him a lot in the Miami Heat. They actually have a game Tuesday night, game 4 against the Boston Celtics, after the Celtics ended up winning game 3 to break that series 2-1. But Jimmy Butler has been in the news because he's been criticized prior to this season for being too harsh, not a good teammate, and having, just being a bad teammate. Well, the Bulls last made the playoffs with Jimmy Butler in 2017. The Timberwolves last made the playoffs in 2018 with Jimmy Butler. The 76ers' best playoff run of the decade came in 2019 with Jimmy Butler. Miami is in the Eastern Conference Finals for the first time since 2014 with Jimmy Butler. I said this a couple of episodes ago. Maybe Jimmy was right. Like, it could be. You saw Joel was longing for that, was talking back and forth. He knows he can go to be appreciated, and some guys respond well to that. We've seen a lot of guys don't. I think what hurt him in Chicago was that there was still an affinity for Derrick Rose, and Jimmy felt like he was the best player on the team at that point, and that just wasn't going to work, and the Bulls chose the healthier, younger Butler. It still would have been nice to see them both play for an extended period of time. With Minnesota, those guys, listen, if you don't know now that there was something missing from those two, from Andrew Wiggins and Karl-Anthony Towns, then I don't know what to tell you. The Sixers, like I just told you, Joel is still long. And then Miami, a bunch of ragtag, undrafted, and mid-round, late-round, second-round picks coming together to reach the Eastern Conference Finals and lead it 2-1. against the Boston team that many said was the odds-on favorite to make it. Now, I still think this will go a longer distance. I do have the Heat coming out of the East, but this series is far from over. I think Boston wins Game 4, and then we start getting that 1-1-1, and we see what happens after that. But Jimmy's impact has been undeniable. Now, granted, last game he was passive, far too passive, and you can't have that. I know he's spoken on not having to go out there and be the do-it-all scorer, but they needed it, and I think he kind of let that part get let that get in the way of going out there and being the dominant player that he can be. He definitely can. He does it. He does it all. There's not a thing that Jimmy can't do. So to see him have a lackluster stat line and to see him lose is highly disappointing. So hopefully, and he got benched. Erik Spoelstra benched him down the stretch. I think that was the message. So I think you come out. Maybe you know what? I'm going to change that pick. Miami's going to come out there and do their damn thing because I think Jimmy's going to come out pissed off that he got benched from Spo at the end of that game that they were losing and they lost. So, yeah, that's my bold one. I don't know if I'm going to lay any money on it, but I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Miami wins Game 4, takes a 3-1, commanding a 3-1 lead over the Boston Celtics. So the recently defeated, eliminated from the postseason Los Angeles Clippers are still in the news. Paul George tried to give an exit speech, basically, to his teammates in the locker room after their Game 7 loss, and it was met with eye rolls and bewilderment. Now, listen, if you read it, it didn't sound like he said anything crazy. He just said, hey, everybody just stay focused and try to come back for another playoff run and blah, 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 but they wasn't feeling it, and listen, I get it, but I don't get it. So the articles are all saying they were kind of, stuck because of how he performed in the playoffs. 20 points per game this year, 39%, almost 40% field goal percentage, but it was under. Was his worst since 2016, back when he was in Indiana. He had 10 points, and he ended round 2 against the Nuggets with 10 points, 25% from the floor, and 18% from 3 in Game 7. So he went out like a screw up. And so that's where the animosity comes from, but I don't think it's warranted per se. I think if it's not just him saving his own bacon, because we all saw that picture of Kawhi giving him the LeBron look like he about to get traded, I think it really is a good sign that he is trying to say, look, y'all, we're going to come back, we're going to do it again. It's not the end. Don't hang your head. Now, granted, they do have a lot of guys who won't be back, and they don't have any cap space. So I'll be really interested to see how they work it out. Rumor has it they are interested in Derrick Rose. That'd be cool. I don't know how they're going to afford it, but I don't think he's going to want a lot of money anyway. They're going to have to move some pieces around because they don't own. I read that their next first-round pick is currently playing in the 6th grade. Damn. Trez is gone. You know what? Listen, truth be told, I like Montrezl Harrell, but I don't think that's going to be a big loss. I think that counting on 2 guys for their bench scoring like that was maybe a hindrance for them, but also I don't necessarily know if Montrezl's value was on full display against the Nuggets. He didn't have the size to stop Jokic. He didn't have the scoring ability to negate him, and oftentimes it just seemed like he was flailing uselessly. Now, that's not to say he's a bad player. I think he's a really good player. I just don't know if it would fit with that situation. I think that they needed more rim protection, more of a big. That's why you saw more Zubats than I think many people might have expected so soon in the playoffs, so often in the playoffs. But yeah, look, PG, my man, shut up. Just go to the house and go fishing, bro. Let it go. I know he was probably saying it like all proud of himself, like, yeah, we're going to rally the troops. And they just looked at him like, man, if you don't shut your ass up, 10 points. Now, granted, Kawhi did it too. So he didn't have a good game either in Game 7. But, yeah, PG, you had too many. He picked it up second round. First round was awful. Second round was better. Still wasn't great. And that's what you get. You get the side eyes and you get people saying stuff. We'll see. I'm sure there'll be more and more fallout as their offseason continues because we already heard how there was locker room turmoil and Doc didn't believe they had this conditioning and blah. Who cares? Excuses. This, though, is hilarious. Flat out hilarious. Sticking in L.A., before we talk about the game, I have to tell you, leave Bronny alone. If you don't know, now you know. LeBron James Jr., Bronny, posted a video of himself on IG smoking weed. My man was getting blowed. Bronny was blowing back on video, posted, puffing. He, camera up. Now, they tried to play off, he accidentally posted it and blah, blah. Ain't nobody buying that, fam. He was looking dead in the camera while smoking. So it's not like he didn't know. I don't buy that one bit. Now, if you know, LeBron and the Lakers have been down in Orlando for quite some time now, and LeBron's response was posting a video of himself playing a harmonica looking for peace. He want to wring that boy's neck so bad. And Bronny out here wilding because he knows his daddy gone. It's a wild situation, boy, but I think we're about to hear that ass whooping from here until next year when they finally get back home. Look, that's not going to be good. Well, he's rich, so he probably just like ground him from the Lambo or something, right? Ain't that what rich people do? I have no idea. I'm a poor person, so I don't know. But yeah, man, look, leave him alone. The kid is 16, 17. He's a kid. He's a kid. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm just saying quit with the mouth drop. Oh my gosh, I can't believe Bronny is out here smoking. Yes, you can. It happened. It's not gonna be the last time that a famous person's child smokes weed. Whatever. Get over it. Gramps. But the Lakers did play a game, and they did take a 2-0 lead that really feels like a much larger disparity than that against the Denver Nuggets after Anthony Davis hit a buzzer beater with 2 seconds left on the clock on an inbounds play that's caused a lot of controversy. So let's talk about that. You had LeBron speaking on MVP votes. He got 16. Giannis was the back-to-back MVP. And LeBron tweeted out 16 votes. Okay, I got y'all. And then when asked about it, said it had him pissed off because this, that, and the third. Now, if you recall, and I know you do because you follow like you're supposed to, we've been talking about the back and forth between LeBron being the MVP and AD being the MVP all season long. AD had the higher counting stats, everybody says, so he should be the MVP of the team. Meanwhile, when you look at it, Brown wasn't that far behind, and you're still getting the added assists and probably a lot of those to AD. And we've seen what happens when Brown was sitting. This is before Rajon Rondo came back, mind you. And the conclusion was, while I personally would probably have said LeBron was the MVP of this two team, I'm not giving it to him on the season because his teammate has a legitimate case. And you can say that should take away, but it definitely don't help. And so anybody that wants to compare the talent around LeBron to the talent around Giannis, have at it. Because if you're trying to tell me that Chris Middleton is anywhere close to Anthony Davis, you're smoking rocks. And I don't think we can have any more discussions after that. Because that's not true. So get over it. And the play, listen, the play that's got everybody talking about him being a real MVP and showing his true value, I'm torn. I'm really torn. So what happened was on an inbound play after the timeout, after a block by Jamal Murray, the Lakers are inbounding. And you have Jeremy Grant sticking LeBron. He motions over to Miles Plumlee to come over and guard LeBron once the ball is inbounded. And so he does. But Grant never, when he does that, Anthony Davis rotates out to the corner right by LeBron. And so it's the same direction that Plumlee would have to go to get to LeBron. When he rotates, I'm not sure if Grant doesn't see it happen or what, but he doesn't move. And LeBron just stands there. So now you got people counting. Now you got people talking about, did LeBron do this on purpose? He was just standing. He didn't even try to get the last shot. He didn't even move. Then you got the other side. Well, he stood there. He sat there and set a pick. Listen, I am genuinely of the second school of thought that he stood there setting a pick and waited for Grant to rotate out, but he just never did. I think that might even call LeBron off right now. AD in the postgame said that the play was originally drawn up for Bron, but that he welcomes these kind of moments and this, that, and the third. We know LeBron needs the closer. That's not. I don't even count that as a knock anymore. It's just he knows what his abilities are. His ability is to set up his teammates and set up his teammates for that type of play. Well, this might just be one more example. You could say he just stood there still, but it's unusually still, right? Even for a play we've seen him stand around, he seems to be standing with a stiffness and it's weird. He's standing still with a purpose. That doesn't make much sense. But when you watch it in live, it seems like he is trying to be in between that. Now, honestly, I just don't know what the hell was going on with Jeremy Grant. You see Joker try to run into the shot and deflect it or block it, but he's not going to get there. I just don't know what Grant was doing. Jeremy Grant, I think, is the one who screwed this up. Now, you could say Plumlee should have bailed on the screen and tried to get out to AD, but I think he thought once Grant motioned him over that meant to go ahead and come guard LeBron while Grant switches. Grant never switched. Bron and Rondo made eye contact, and that's where I think the switch happened, where Bron, see, You're talking about two of the highest basketball intellects in the NBA. Might be the two highest. And I'm not even being sarcastic in this situation. These two sharing an eye look could have literally been them shifting the play over to AD. Bron could have gave him that face like, nah, fam. And listen, I know it sounds ridiculous, but if you know me, you know I'm far from a Bron apologist. So I literally think that this could have been him setting it up. Needless to say, neither one of them should be the MVP of the NBA because they have each other. Enjoy this ring that y'all about to get and leave Giannis out of this. I will say this, though. As I sat here and critiqued Bron for speaking on it, I really do think he did it as a distractionary tactic to keep the conversation light and fun and ridiculous around the team as they are approaching their next ring. They're going to get it. There's not even a doubt in my mind they're going to get it. So just hold off on the MVP talk. Enjoy the ring. Let it happen and know LeBron is still the best player on this team. Had to slip that in there. AD, I love you, brother. Chicago's own. LeBron still stirs that drink. So that just is what it is. Sticking with some Chicago news, The Last Dance wins an Emmy for Outstanding Documentary. So congrats to Michael Jordan and director Jason Hare on their outstanding accomplishment for their outstanding documentary that I think we all enjoyed. Hell, it got me on the radio for a couple of weeks, so I'm not complaining. It was a fun thing to see. Some other news, and we'll come back to the Bulls in a second, more MJ stuff, but come back to that in a second. Kevin Durant, and this is from Steve Nash, his new head coach with the Brooklyn Nets. Kevin Durant with his length is a matchup problem for everyone. Kevin can play all 5 positions, and I plan to use him in all 5 positions. That's probably one of the least bold takes from a new head coach I've ever heard in my life. He's right on every single one of those things. Every single one. Now, after the Achilles, you probably don't want him bringing the ball up, but he can handle it. He can set the play. There's not many real centers in the NBA right now, so you can put him at the 5. Why not? He's got the length for some of these small dudes. He can handle that. That's not a bold statement. It's a wise statement. Damn it, you better. Yeah, you better get the most out of him. We'll see. I can't wait to see how that team looks because, the firepower there between he and Kyrie alone is nasty. But then you got Spencer Dinwiddie still, Karis LeVert, and we'll see how all this shakes out. But that could be something serious, man. Half man, half amazing. Living legend Vince Carter has signed a multi-year deal with ESPN to serve as an NBA and college basketball analyst. Salute, sir. Right on time. Not a better person it could have happened to, and he got all of them. He knows the coach. He's been around for forever. I love it. Back to Milwaukee. We talked about this last week a little bit, that the Bucks had sat down with Giannis and promised to spend some money into the luxury tax to get him some more help. Well, one of the names that's come out, we talked about Chris Paul. They're now talking about Russell Westbrook. And all I have to say is, no, don't do that. I just told you, Russ is my favorite player, but this is a horrible fit, a horrible idea. Go get Derrick Rose. That would be great. That would be a much better fit for this. And it would be close to home. I think he would put on because he's so close to the Shy. The Russ thing, that contract, you trying to add that money? I don't get it. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't even fit. That's the problem. I still think Russ would be better off with a team built of shooters around him, but you definitely don't want to put him with Giannis. That fourth quarter decision making is going to be atrocious. Period. Just bad. And then we'll wrap up with this one. A shout out to the GOAT. Another shout out to the GOAT. Michael Jordan is starting a NASCAR team with Denny Hamlin and his first driver, Bubba Wallace. Congrats, salute, and hopefully much success, much continued success. But yeah, that's dope, man. Bubba was in the news after the noose was found in his garage earlier on this year, and the FBI got involved, determined it wasn't anything nefarious, but that doesn't mean that they also said he had nothing to do with it. A lot of people didn't get that part of the memo. They just heard that it wasn't nefarious and whatever. That got real fast. But I think the most important part of this is Michael Jordan's got to raise a team. He's trying to win in another avenue, man. That dude is something else. Congrats to the GOAT, man. That's going to do it for this episode of Triple Zeros. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Joshy Buck. Hit up the Facebook page, Clocker Sports. Website, clockersports.com. Email address is clockersports@gmail.com. And, of course, read all of the stuff Last Word on Pro Football, Pippin and Easy, and clockersports.com, and of course American Betting Experts. We'll have my picks up this week. Had some communication issues. We're getting them up this week because we got to start betting on these Bears, man, and I got to get you guys some of this money that I'm trying to, that I'm putting in my own pocket. So more on that and everything else, of course, in the days to come. Check me out next week. Tune in, and we'll talk then. But until then, I think you know what that is. That's the sound of the horns.